Well, we meet again for another special edition of PFT PM because another coaching vacancy has been filled. The vacancy in Atlanta, not filled by the person that many regarded over this past weekend as the front runner for the job. Bill Belichick, no job for him in Atlanta. We'll talk about him in a second. For now, let's talk about the guy who got the job. And if I recall correctly, and there's a chance I don't, on one of the playoff editions of Football Night in America during the Super Wild Card round, we mentioned the possibility of Raheem Morris landing in Atlanta, that there was a thought that it could happen. He had been there for several years as a coordinator, as an assistant coach. He was actually the interim coach to wrap up the 2020 season. They didn't hire him in 2021. They went with Arthur Smith. And now, 3 years after Raheem leaves the organization, he returns as the head coach. This is a great story when you think about it. He became the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 15 years ago, and he was 32 years old. That was the big surprise move when John Gruden out, Bruce Allen out, Raheem Morris in. The GM, whose name currently escapes me, I can see him, I can hear him. I'm having a hard time remembering his name. I'll think of it probably as soon as we're done. He was in as well. God, it's going to drive me crazy. Regardless, Raheem Morris was the head coach at age 32. He had the job for 3 years. He then was fired and replaced by Greg Schiano. And then after that, look at the experience he's gotten. I'm looking at his bio here. He, after leaving Tampa Bay, ended up with Washington for 3 years as a defensive backs coach, another head coach from that incredible staff that has spawned 4 or 5 head coaches as of right now. 2015 through 2019, he was assistant head coach and passing game coordinator for the Falcons. So he flipped over to offense in Atlanta, working at first with Kyle Shanahan under Dan Quinn, and then staying after Shanahan left for San Francisco. And finally, in 2020, going back to defense, working as coordinator that year. And then becoming the interim head coach, went to the Rams, obviously, in 2021, won the Super Bowl there, did a great job this past year with an overmatched defense, a young defense. Other than Aaron Donald, there were a lot of guys that nobody really knew who they were. Now they do. And now we know that Raheem Morris getting his second shot at age 47, 15 years after he got his first chance, 12 years after he was fired, he's back. It's a great story of persistence and resilience. And a smart move by the Falcons. A chance to get the most of a guy who is widely respected, who has experience on both sides of the ball, and now who can come in and be much better prepared the second time around than he was the first time around. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does as head coach of the Falcons. Obviously, they need to find a quarterback. They need an answer at quarterback. It doesn't seem to be Taylor Heineke or Desmond Ridder. We'll see where they go from here. I'm still trying to think of the name of the Bucs. It was Mark something. He's still involved in some media. He had like salt and pepper hair forever. Mark, what's his last name? It'll drive me crazy until I have a chance to look it up when we're done. Okay, so Belichick, remember his name? Know his name. He's getting shut out. Unless another job comes open and they hire him, he is not going to have a head coaching job. That is astounding to me. There's 2 vacancies currently, #currently, Washington and Washington. Washington and Seattle, Commanders and Seahawks. Every other job is now filled. Unless a job comes open. Am I missing a job? We've got Titans, we've got Chargers, we've got Panthers, we've got Falcons, Patriots, Raiders. The 2 left, Seahawks and Commanders. So, now remember, this is going to get Chiefs fans triggered. I don't know whether or not Andy Reid's going to retire, but there's reason to believe the Chiefs have on their radar screen the possibility that it'll happen. What if it happens? What if it happens? You know what I think will happen if it happens? I think the players will start saying, we want Eric Bieniemy, even if ownership would like to cast its lot with Bill Belichick. And wouldn't that be something? What an alliance that would be. Belichick and Patrick Mahomes. As Belichick tries to get at least one to match what Tom Brady did once he left the Patriots, and Mahomes keeps trying to get more and more and more to eventually catch Tom Brady. That would be something if it happens, unless there's somebody else out there that is secretly pondering firing their coach. Belichick will be passed over. What will he do? Will he work in media? There will be interest in him. He was very good on that NFL 100 show where they went over the top 100 players in league history, the all-time 100 team, whatever. I can't remember. It's been 4 years ago, and a lot's happened since then. So I forget exactly what it was called. Just I can't. Mark Dominic, son of a bitch. Mark Dominic. Yes. Thank you. Sorry that Kristen has to bleep that out. Anyway, or maybe she won't. Mark Dominic. Fine. I knew it would come to me. Anyway, here's what it does, though. It gives Belichick the whole year to position and posture and plan for what he's going to do in 2025, assuming that he chooses to get back in. And he clearly wants back in. He interviewed twice with the Falcons. He wants to catch Don Shula. He wants a win. He wants to enhance his legacy. At a minimum, I've heard he wants to not just get one more than Don Shula. He wants to set the bar a lot higher than it currently is with Don Shula. So interesting times. And as I said over the weekend, at least one team with a vacancy was considering interviewing Bill Belichick. I have no idea which team it was. It could be one of the two teams that still has a vacancy. Now, I don't think the Commanders are going to get in because they've got the power structure that they want in place. They want a coach to just coach. They have Adam Peters to run the show. They want a coach to just coach. So I'd be very surprised if they pivot back around. And remember when I said on Football Night in America that Josh Harris, the new owner of the Commanders, is enamored with the idea of Bill Belichick coaching the team. I also said after that, the issue would be, does he just want to coach the team? And are they comfortable to hire him to just coach the team? When Robert Kraft explained a couple of weeks ago that it would be awkward to have Bill Belichick in New England with less than full power because who's really in charge at that point? That same dynamic potentially applies if he's going to go somewhere else and not be fully in charge because he's been fully in charge for so long. It will be awkward for whoever does have the power if Belichick's there because he just kind of has the habit of taking the place over. So I don't know. Look, after I said that, the Commanders mobilized to shout down the idea that Belichick might be the next coach. And somebody I spoke to who has knowledge of the search told me the same thing, but then said, well, you never know. Things could change, which leaves that just a little crack, just a little crack. I mean, what if he shows up hat in hand saying, I'll take whatever I can get. I'm happy to be the coach. What if the teams now have the leverage to say, Bill, here's how it's going to be. You want to coach the team, you coach the team. You want to cook the meal, that's fine, but you ain't shopping for the groceries. We've seen your grocery list. We've seen the rancid heads of lettuce that you've brought home from Joe's fruit stand. We've seen the papayas. We've seen the plantains. We've seen the plums with red on the inside. You're not doing a good job picking out groceries. You'll just cook the meal. And again, I said over the weekend, there was one team that didn't have a vacancy that was considering Belichick. Does this take some of the glow away? The idea that the Falcons didn't hire him. Now, we don't know whether or not the Falcons offered him the job. And if Belichick wants to preserve his status, his standing, and he was offered the job, might want to get that out there, that you said no, that you passed, that there was an impasse over Rich McKay's involvement. And that's the other side of this too. If there was a power struggle underneath Arthur Blank, because one thing I pointed out over the weekend, the coach and the GM report to the CEO in Atlanta. The CEO is Rich McKay. And that whole Rich McKay factor is just one of the things that we thought would be an issue. After all these years of not having to deal with anyone in the building other than ownership, now you got to deal with Rich McKay. You report to Rich McKay, that's not going to be something that Belichick wants. And Rich McKay is not going to want Belichick in the building, common sense would say, because that takes away Rich McKay's power and influence. If Arthur Blank wants Bill Belichick, he's got to put Rich McKay in the corner. Well, how it all works out, Rich McKay, he's still going to be in position to have both the GM, Terry Fontenot, and the head coach, Raheem Morris, report to him. He's still relevant. He's still got that great job where you're kind of in charge, but you're not accountable. You run the show, but you can't get fired. It's like the next best thing to being the owner. You can't get fired. They'll fire everybody else. They won't fire you. So Rich McKay wins in this. Terry Fontenot wins in this. Terry Fontenot's status might have been tenuous if Bill Belichick had become the coach of the team. Now, not. So, Raheem Morris coach, Bill Belichick possibly shut out, barring an unexpected development at this point. What does that mean for him? Media in 2024, or wait and jump into the next cycle. Maybe the Cowboy, maybe Shireen will be getting that tattoo after all. The twin turbo tattoos of Jerry Jones on one cheek and Bill Belichick on the other. Maybe it'll happen next year instead of this year. But that's where we are. And, oh, by the way, on the back end of this, the Rams are going to pick up a pair of third-round picks. I'm not a huge fan of the rule as applied to somebody who's been a coach before or somebody who's been a GM before, that if you have someone in your building who is groomed to become a coach or a GM and becomes a coach or a GM elsewhere, you get 2 third-round picks as compensation because that advances the overall representation of minority coaches and general managers. I like the idea that there's a system in place that's working. And when the NFL has had the mess that it's had for so long, any effort to clean it up, no matter how imperfect it may be, is better than what the NFL has had for decades. But if a guy's already been a head coach before, if a guy's already been a GM before, that's not quite the same. I mean, there were people like, why does Les Snead even need to promote Raheem Morris? Raheem Morris's resume and credentials speak for themselves. He's been a coach for 3 years. He's respected throughout the league. He's worked with the Falcons. So the Rams are going to pick up a pair of third-round picks, and they won't say no to that because, anytime we talk about things for which teams could be or should be punished, the specter of losing draft picks always becomes that thing that keeps teams in line. You flip it around. You got something out there where you can get draft picks. It incentivizes you. And the Rams had an incentive to properly groom and prepare and promote Raheem Morris to be a coach. That's the way it is. And again, it's been such a bad system for so long. Any effort to make it better is welcomed by me and presumably by the league, or they wouldn't do it. But there is a benefit there to this. They got to find a new defensive coordinator now, but there is a benefit to the Rams in the form of the 2 third-round picks because they properly groomed and positioned and promoted Raheem Morris to become a head coach. So he's the new coach of the Atlanta Falcons. We will wait to see what happens with the Seahawks and the Commanders, and whether or not any other job might come open as we get deeper and deeper into January. Who knows? It's been a crazy couple of weeks, and when crazy things happen, you have to brace yourself for more crazy. If anything else crazy happens tonight, you may see me again. Otherwise, you'll see me Friday morning, PFT Live with Peter King, 2 hours reacting to everything that we've just discussed, any new information, and anything else that may be happening in the National Football League. Thanks, as always, for some of your time. We'll see you bright and early on Friday. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.